Hello, I'm here on the TM studio with Ludovica Bello from Laura Devine Immigration. Ludovica, if you could tell us a little bit about your job role, a little bit about your interest in manufacturing.
Sure, thank you very much for having me. So I'm a solicitor at Laura Devine Immigration, and it's a law firm that deals exclusively with immigration law. We do both UK inbound and US inbound immigration, and my role as a solicitor is I help people come to the UK, whether it's assisting companies or assisting private individuals. We do everything across the board.
Fantastic. And skills issues, skills gap is something that we talk about quite a lot at the manufacturer, write about quite a lot of the manufacturer. So what is your take on the current skills issues within UK manufacturing, and how is that linked to immigration?
Sure, so it's something that we've been looking at because the government has recently identified advanced manufacturing in particular as an area for growth, one of the main areas for growth. So that's where we've also taken an interest in it, in trying to assist companies to bring migrant workers in. And the manufacturing sector has historically been very reliant on immigration to fill some of these workforce gaps that we see. One of the particular characteristics of the manufacturing sector is that it recruits everything from very low-skilled labor to very high-skilled labor, and absolutely everything in between as well. And so what we've seen is that with regards to the lower-skilled labor end of the spectrum, traditionally those jobs were filled a lot by EU workers, and following Brexit, there's been an issue in that no more EU workers have been able to come in. Those that were here, for the most part, were able to stay, but it has created more vacancies because a lot of those jobs were not eligible for work visas. And at the higher skill end of the spectrum, we've seen that there's still vacancies related to the STEM sector not being able to attract enough candidates. And so there's kind of vacancy problems all across the board there.
Okay, I mean, obviously you mentioned it there, but what has been the implications on the skills issues within manufacturing as a result, pre and post Brexit? Obviously, I imagine the impact has been enormous, but what are you seeing from your side?
Absolutely, we have seen that it's been harder to recruit, so it's caused a further problem in the vacancies, increasing if anything, and that's something that is particularly enhanced within the manufacturing sector, but also across other sectors. There are immigration routes and work routes that are supposed to be able to tackle those things, but what we've seen is that the market needs don't always align with immigration policies, and immigration policies in the last few years have been particularly restrictive, and that's a trend that seems to be continuing with the current Labour government as well.
I see. And further to that, the government has recently produced a white paper around this very issue. What do you see as being the potential impacts of that for advanced manufacturing in the UK?
So firstly, just to recap on what the white paper is exactly. So it's a document that was released in the last couple of weeks by the government, which essentially sets out the upcoming changes to immigration policy and the proposed reforms to immigration policy. It's important to note it hasn't actually been enacted in law yet, so some of those proposals may still change, and the government has said that it will consult with stakeholders, and we're actually hoping that some of those proposals might be pulled back, because on the whole, it's looking to make immigration routes a lot more restrictive. At the same time, it's looking to attract very highly skilled workers to the UK. So restrictions mainly affecting family routes, work routes, but trying to attract very high skilled labour to the UK.
Sure. And obviously we've been speaking recently, and we ran a story on the manufacturer website around this particular issue, and it mentioned skilled worker sponsorship and potential changes to that. Can you talk a little bit around those and what the potential implications are?
Sure. So the skilled worker route is the main work visa route available to companies to bring in foreign nationals through sponsorship. And the requirements for sponsorship now in this white paper, the proposals are to make that much more restrictive. So lots of changes suggested within that category. Briefly to recap, so there is the proposal that for settlement, instead of being here for 5 years of residence, people would need to spend 10 years of residence here. English language requirement is being increased, salary requirement is being increased, skill level requirement is being increased, sponsorship costs are being increased. So on the whole, it's going to essentially be much, much harder to sponsor skilled workers and to grant work visas.
I see. And I think you touched on it there, but picking out some of the takeaways from that article that we covered recently was the increase in our RQF skill level for manufacturers. Can you explain a little bit about what that means and its implications as well?
Sure. So the RQF level indicates basically at what level a job needs to be skilled in order to be eligible for sponsorship. So currently the standard is that jobs must be RQF level 6, which is equivalent more or less to A-level standard. What the proposal is that will rise to RQF level 6, which will be degree level standard. So the main impact of that will be felt in middle skill level jobs that currently are eligible for sponsorship and will no longer be eligible. So for instance, specific to the manufacturing industry, you will see things like welders and engineering technicians. Currently, those can come in from overseas on a work visa. They'll no longer be eligible for sponsorship. Potentially, the shortage occupation lists could mitigate some of that impact, but it will definitely be felt in the industry.
Sure. And can you explain a little bit around the temporary shortage list and what that might mean for lower skilled roles in manufacturing and its implications again?
Yes, so the temporary shortage list, I struggle with the name because it's been renamed about 3 times.
Right.
So every government comes in and renames it, but it's essentially almost a rebranding exercise. So it was previously known as the shortage occupation list, currently known as the immigration salary list, and then will become known as the temporary salary list. The basic principle hasn't changed, which is essentially that where certain jobs are in shortage in the UK and the Migration Advisory Committee has identified these roles as being in shortage, it encourages the government to put them on this list so that even if they don't meet specific requirements, like the skill level requirement or the salary requirement, they will be allowed to bring in workers from overseas. Something that's changed with the new proposal, the temporary one that's being talked about in the white paper, is that there will be a cap on the numbers that are allowed within this list and that it will be temporary in nature. So we don't know a lot of detail about what that means, but it might be that it's only applicable to temporary contracts and that jobs might be on the list and then be removed off the list. So it sort of seems to present a temporary solution to what is a very long-term problem. And another difficulty is that companies will need to meet a lot of requirements in order to make use of the temporary list. Amongst them, they'll need to show that the shortage in labor is a long-term issue. They will need to show that the Migration Advisory Committee has said that it is justified. And they will also need to show that they have workforce strategies in place. And broadly what that means is that they have tried to recruit domestically and that also that they're investing in the domestic workforce through things such as training programs and trying to recruit from the economically inactive domestically. So where they're able to meet all that criteria, they might be able to use the temporary list, but it might be that some companies aren't able to show, particularly for the smaller and medium enterprises, to show that they're able to invest in these training programs, for instance, and then they might not be able to make use of the list. But we don't know enough detail as it stands.
One figure that sort of leapt out at the recent news story we covered was the 32% increase in immigration skills charge for foreign worker recruitment. Can you explain a little bit around the potential implications of that and what that might mean and why the percentage increase has been so significant?
So the immigration skills charge is one of the highest costs already within immigration sponsorship. And it's essentially a tax that's being applied to companies who want to sponsor foreign workers. And the idea is for that tax to then be reinvested into training the domestic workforce. At least theoretically, we don't exactly know the detail of where that money ends up. But it's currently, for most companies, you would pay £1,000 per worker per year. So it's very easy to do the maths there. If you're bringing somebody in for a 5-year visa, you're paying £5,000, and that's one cost alone within a wide set of immigration costs. An increase of 32% in that is significant, and it will potentially mean that some companies just simply can't afford to recruit from abroad. And I mean, indirectly, that's one of the aims of the current government, because it's talked about wanting to bring net migration numbers down. So in increasing the costs for sponsoring foreign workers, I think the government is also hoping that companies turn to the domestic workforce more and more. But the problem with an industry like the manufacturing industry is that those vacancies are already there. And I think employers are already trying to recruit domestically, and they're just not finding people to fill those gaps. So it might potentially just create additional costs for those companies that are already in a situation where they simply can't fill the vacancies.
And it's their avenues to fill the roles that they've got is going to be limited, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, not to want to end on a pessimistic note or anything like that, but sort of looking ahead, what does the future hold, both short and long term, with regards to A, the skills gap, and B, foreign worker recruitment in the UK?
Well, it's not all bad news as far as the white paper is concerned. So with the government wanting to attract more highly skilled labor, it's also expanding and making more flexible some highly skilled worker routes, like global talent, like the high potential individual route, like innovator founder. Now, those are relatively niche when it comes to the manufacturing industry. It maybe won't be applicable to the wide majority of companies. But another positive development is with youth mobility schemes and the expansion of those are typically for younger migrants aged between 18 and 30 or 18 and 35. They're able to come to the UK for a period of 2 or 3 years, and they have virtually unlimited amounts of activities that they can do. So they can work, they can study, they can work in higher skilled jobs, lower skilled jobs. So that could be potentially a really useful thing for the manufacturing industry to fill those shortages. The reason why it's being expanded is because the UK has been agreeing a number of new trade deals with different countries. So for instance, the Indian trade deal recently has then given rise to the Indian Young Professional Scheme, where Indian nationals are now able to come in and work. And more recently, the EU-UK trade deal that's currently being discussed, it's likely that that will also have an element of youth mobility scheme included within that, and will help bring younger EU migrants in. So those could really help to plug some of the vacancies and the workforce gaps that we are seeing now.
Fantastic. Ludovica, thanks for joining us on the TM studio. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.